Hi, Thursday, June 23rd, 2016. Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. And today is the day that the British people will decide whether they want to be ruled by a fascist, authoritarian EU superstate or whether they want to be a free and sovereign nation. This might sound a bit radical and conspiratorial, but frankly, I don't care. Hopefully, the British people will have enough sense to leave the EU, and hopefully, in 30 years' time, they won't be listening to this video and saying, "Oh, we should have listened to that guy." And as Edmund Burke once said in the 18th century, the only thing, and I quote, "the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." That's what he said. Or women, for that matter, if we apply this quote to nowadays. And talking about good men, I want to speak about Christopher Story. His full name was Edward Harl, and his pen name was Christopher Story. Story. He was an economic advisor to Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister of the UK from 1979 to 1990. Margaret Thatcher was pro the common market in the 70s. She campaigned for it, but she realized that it was becoming, a project that would eventually drive this country into an EU superstate. And in 1990, she was kicked out of office basically by her own cabinet and her own members of her own party because she was blocking the ascension of the British pound into the ERM, which was the precursor to the euro, the exchange rate mechanism. So there's a guy back then, and he's still around, by the name of Michael Heseltine. He's now called also Baron Heseltine. It's funny how they like giving these people all these fancy titles, even though, they're not doing really any good for their country. And Michael Heseltine was the guy who challenged Margaret Thatcher for party leadership in 1990, and it triggered her fall. And it's very interesting because the other day, or on June 21st, so 2 days ago, Michael Heseltine, who's still around, was on LBC Radio, which is a talk show radio, very popular in the UK, biggest in the UK, and London especially. And he debated Nigel Farage, who's a very anti-EU candidate. He's a UKIP leader. And actually, Michael Heseltine claimed that Britain will join the euro and that the British people should vote to remain in the EU and that eventually we will be part of the euro. So here you have the guy who backstabbed Margaret Thatcher in 1990 because she didn't want to be part of the European club. And he's still around and he's saying, vote to stay. You're going to be as miserable as the Greeks, the Italians, and the Portuguese. You're going to be in a great fascist state. And you actually joined the euro. So it was quite apparently a heated debate. I'll put the links to the article about that. So it got me thinking, interesting that the man who backstabbed Margaret Thatcher in 1990 is also a big proponent of the European Union and the euro, even though he's a conservative MP or ex-MP. So it just goes to show that this European project has no party line. It's just about fascism. And the other point I like to make is that a few weeks ago, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who is an economics writer, very well respected for the Daily Telegraph, mainstream, he came out and said that the CIA, there's proof that the CIA was the brain child, the European Union was the brainchild of the CIA in the 50s, and that they supported it and funded the European project. This is something that I've talked about in my previous videos, because back in 1941, the German intelligentsia of the Nazi government, they had a meeting in Berlin, and they talked about a European economic community. And even Christopher Story touches upon that. He says the Germans saw that there was a chance that they would lose the war, so they were preparing for after the war. And Christopher Story also argues that through Operation Paperclip, which is public knowledge, a lot of the Nazi scientists, intelligentsia, officials went to the United States through Operation Paperclip, which is carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency, or also known as CIA. And Christopher Story argues, and I'll put all the links to his videos about this, that the CIA was infiltrated by the German, these Nazis that came from Germany, and that the EU project, which was the brainchild of the CIA, was very, very much influenced by these people who came from Europe. So this is like a fascist project, and hopefully, the British people will vote to leave the EU. If not, when people maybe listen to this video 20 to 30 years from now, they'll say, I hope they won't say, oh, that guy was right, we shouldn't have done that. I hope they won't even listen to it, because hopefully the British people will vote to leave the European Union. And all I can say is that if you vote to stay, and there will be no turning back, and the European Commission president, or one of their presidents, they have so many posts and confusion, which is a hallmark of the old Soviet system, which Christopher Story talks about. No, you never know what's really going on. Yes, one of these presidents, Juncker, I think Jean-Claude Juncker or Juncker, he said that if you vote to stay, that's it. You have to follow the rules. There's not going to be any reform. So that's what it's at stake, in my opinion. And yeah, you might call the points of views I put through to you conspiracy, but it's actually out in the mainstream now. The Daily Telegraph is saying that the EU is a CIA project. Christopher Story, who advised Margaret Thatcher while she was Prime Minister, he says it's a long-term plan to take over Europe by the German intelligentsia from the 1940s. So let's hope that this doesn't happen. Let's hope that the UK leaves the EU today. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching, and good luck. Bye.